that have joined or that have been watching since the start. This is a new episode of Nass the Pod Season 5 with favorite NBA host, Nass. I have a couple things I'm going to touch upon tonight real quick. I have the Sixers and Grizzlies playing on Peacock. I'm streaming that while I go through this episode. But basically, I wanted to start off with I have three intriguing, looming Eastern Conference teams that I think, based on their performance, based on particular players returning, they may shift the landscape of the Eastern Conference. So I want to touch on that, those three teams. I also want to talk about the Pelicans since the return of Zion, and I know people are really exhausted with talking about Zion and the Pelicans and the moves they've made, but they had a pretty good draft. They have some very intriguing players, younger players, players that are actually on the cusp of their prime. So I want to really touch upon that. And then if I have time, I want to bring in some details regarding, our not fantasy football, sorry. You have to excuse me. I've just left my fantasy football season. So my heart is still very heavy, but I wanted to touch upon the fantasy basketball league that Ace, the one and only Ace, young AC, he was kind enough to invite me to. My boy Toby invited me to a couple of fantasy leagues too, but it was last second. I was put on pressure, and I think the draft days weren't gonna line up, so I couldn't accept his invite. But Ace invited me to. This is my first NBA fantasy league. I want to say in like 2-3 years. I think my second or third year at Nike, we as a staff, like, we got like 12 of us to join a fantasy league, and it was fun. I don't think I won. I know it was like me, Ace, Ty, Bentley, I think Jason too, my boy Eddie Smith, Kevin, Henry, Danny Pena. From what I remember, I think those were like the people that were in it. I want to say like 2-3 years ago, but yeah, just the difference really between fantasy football and fantasy basketball. Like, obviously, I love both, but fantasy football is just so much more easier to maintain because they're playing once a week, so you really don't have to like look at your team for like the first 3-4 days of the week. Depending on like if you have a player playing on Thursday night, you might have to like see if he's playing on Thursday night, or if there's a guy that's hurt and he might play on Thursday night, you might substitute him or something like that. But obviously, like it's just a straightforward process. It's just 7 days. Your week ends. I don't think waivers don't clear until Wednesday, so there'll be like Monday Night Football. Then the whole week will end. Tuesday is the start of your week. See what players you want, acquire. Wednesday, waivers clear. Now you have like a day and a half. Maybe your player's gonna play on that Thursday, maybe not, but you have a couple of days to figure out your lineups. But yeah, I was fortunate to be in 4 leagues this year. 2 of the leagues were my bigger staked leagues. I think one was 100 a pop in the 10-man. I think another one was, I want to say 125 in a 12-man, and I think another one was like 80, another 12, and then the other one I just was just for bragging rights. So yeah, man, 3 playoff teams out of 4. Shout out the whole P Gritty, Odell, Cleat Closet Enterprises, man. Man, I'm in my feels, bro. Like, damn, I was the leading point scorer in 2 of those leagues, and I got bounced, bro. Got bounced. I lost in the Super Bowl in one of them. The other one, well, actually, I was the top 2 seed in 3 of the leagues, but one of them was like the one that was for bragging rights. 2 of them were the higher staked ones, and injuries, man. Tay Adams and Mahomes, I lost them on a bye week, and I just crumbled, bro. I just crumbled. I played Waddle in the championship, and on the other team, he left to an injury. And I think I ended up losing by like 7 points. Bijan put on a hell of a performance yesterday. So yeah, it was God. Fantasy football, I get so attached every year. It's crazy. It's just like half of it is the money, and the other half of it is like it's such a super fun like 5 6 months. If you really like football, it's just fun. If you really watch football, it's fun. So yeah, now I'm in fantasy basketball. Um, I'll probably touch upon that later. But to kick off the episode, I have three intriguing Eastern Conference teams that I think they may translate, to the end of the year. I don't think they're a final product yet. There's some key things going on. So to start off, I'm gonna start off with the Milwaukee Bucks, who have been like a middle to like bottom third like NBA team as a whole. They're the metrics don't really jump off the charts for them. Giannis has been missing time. They're actually 2-0. They're 2-0 since he's returned. But I didn't want to talk about Giannis. I wanted to talk about two players that are helping fill the Damian Lillard void from last year after he tore his Achilles and ultimately, ended up back in Portland. But Kevin Porter Jr. and Ryan Rollins, two, they're not really like popular in terms of, name, but they're two players that are pretty dynamic. They can shoot the ball, they can beat the first layer of the defense, they can make plays for others. And, on certain nights, if they're both going, you'll be surprised how like tough of a team like Milwaukee is to beat. So Kevin Porter Jr., he actually played well towards the end of the season last year for Milwaukee while he was sharing minutes with, Dame Dalla, Gary Trent, um, in the backcourt. So KPJ tore his meniscus last year, comes back. His first 10 games this year, he's averaging 21 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 64 true shooting, 2.5 steals, and was a plus 4.1 estimated plus minus guy. And that was higher than guys like James Harden, Reeves, Brunson. So he's been pretty vital to the Milwaukee Bucks and just everything they've been doing outside of Giannis. And when you think about it, like since Drew Holiday, since Chris Middleton, you haven't had someone. You could throw Dame in, obviously, in that conversation too. The Bucks have been missing that dynamic guy off the dribble outside of Giannis that can go and put pressure at the point of attack, get into the paint, create for others. No one has really been that piece for Giannis in terms of simplifying the game for him, making his life easier. I mean, this is a guy that for the past 5 years he's like 30 points, 12 rebounds, like 5 6 dimes, 60 plus from the field. He's actually made some strides with his mid-range pull-up jump shot. I'm pretty sure last year, analytic-wise, he actually was one of the better like mid-range jump shooters across the league. So Giannis has been improving year in year out, and then on top of that, you're gonna expect all NBA level defense. So Giannis is not the issue here. Obviously, he's had some injury flameouts the past like 2 3 years where his body just breaks down. You know what I mean? This is like the same thing with James Harden. It's like everyone gets on him for choking in big moments, but I think part of it is just like he just exerts so much energy. Like that, his teams have like had to depend on him so much to produce and dictate everything that by the time they get to second round in May, he kind of just burns out. It's weird. So I think Giannis, that's been the case for him too. I mean, the Bucks have thrown everything his way, since they've won in 2021. They haven't really been seen as this like title contending juggernaut since they moved off Middleton, since they moved off Holiday. And we're about to be in 2026. I don't know if the Bucks have reached an Eastern Conference Finals, let alone how many second rounds they've been able to make since departing those two vital pieces from that 2021 title team. So I just think that Kevin Porter Jr. This is huge for him because I don't even know how much he's making this year, but the big deal with Dame wasn't about his availability, but also the price tag was you're paying this amount of money for a guy that A is not even on the court, and then two is a guy who's aging. So let's see. KPJ signed a 2-year, $10 million contract with the Bucks. in 2024. So, well, 2024, 2025. He's actually an unrestricted free agent next year. So he's not an expiring next year. He's already outplayed his contract, in my opinion. I mean, he's making 2 years, 10 mil. Like, that's crazy for the production he's been able to give them. I can envision them at least like giving him, a legit contract because he's only 25 years old. And it's like, what better option do you have on the market for a guy that's going to give you like 25 and 5? Like, I don't know at that age. I just don't know who can give you that. That would at least like guarantee you the back end of Giannis's, tenure. Because the big picture is just guaranteeing that Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee. That's been, the big elephant in the room is, okay, is Giannis going to be here? Is he moving on? What's the case? What's going on? And, you know, it's like, obviously you don't want to move off a, top 25 all-time player, top 75 level player. But at the same time, it's like, you got to kind of make do with what you have. And it's not like Milwaukee is really the most attractive place for free agents either. So I feel like they should really, really prioritize KPJ and really like they should start now, especially with what he's shown us. They should really start to like, kind of whisper in his ear, like, listen, man, like maybe we can figure out something for you. Because obviously he wants to stay in the league. He wants to make more money. Clearly he's way like he's clearly way too qualified to be overseas. And yeah, I just feel like he's gonna be a pretty big difference maker for Milwaukee going forward. They've only played 2 games. Their schedule going ahead's kind of light. I looked at it. They have Ryan Rollins. I haven't, really elaborated about him, but he's actually been very, very impressive on the drive. He's shooting 57% on 117 drives over his past 10 games. KPJ is also shooting north of 50% on 177 drives his past 10 games. So you got two guys that clearly can shoot. I think both those guys are north of 35, 36% from three. And then you have two guys that can, like I said, get past that first layer of defense, get to that backline of defense, draw defenders, drive and kick, find Giannis, find guys like Miles Turner, just get high quality looks. As far as defense, that's like another story. They've had some nights where they can defend. Obviously, when Giannis isn't on the court, that really tilts what you want to do defensively, especially with his ability to clean up, mistakes and lapses and, missed rotations and everything. But I really do think these two guards, I think they're going to be pretty huge for the Bucks going forward. I can see right now the Bucks, I believe right now they're in the play-in. Right now, the Milwaukee Bucks are 11th in the East. They're a half game out of the play-in. They're right behind the Atlanta Hawks. And I can see it. I mean, the schedule going forward, like I said, it's light, but I think right now is all about just making sure there are guys on the court because, and I said this, last episode, that these are the early to middle stages where you want your main guys to be on the court together just so the camaraderie is built, it's established. There's a coexistence amongst your teammates. If any of you guys are watching this, Sixers Memphis on Peacock, 11 minutes left in the game. Sixers are up 4. We gotta kick that. Embiid, I'm not gonna lie to you, and wow, another 3. Embiid showing signs, chat. I'm not gonna lie to you. He's showing some signs. But that brings me to my next East team. So the Philadelphia 76ers. Going into Christmas, they were 5th in the East, 11th in net rating, 7th in defensive rating, and their 5-man lineup of PG, Embiid, Quinn Grimes, Barlow, and VJ Edgecombe, plus 23.3 net rating in 33 total minutes. That was 9th in the NBA amongst rotations that played at least 30 minutes a game in total. PG during that stretch entering Christmas was averaging 21, 5, and 3.5 on just a tick under 60% true shooting, plus 13.7 net rating, which was first on the team. And VJ has been shooting nearly 40% from 3 over his last 15 games. Tyrese Maxey, a very, very soft MVP candidate. He's really kind of dragged this Philly team through the mud, especially with Embiid getting his legs back under him. PG the same. He's averaging 31 points a game, third in the league, 4 rebounds, take under 7 assists. I feel like I don't want to say this level of play is not sustainable for Maxi because we've seen it from him. Wow, Ja is really playing well. But I do think that he may hit like a wall in terms of just like just the thought that he has to continue to drag this team that it's almost like Donovan Mitchell, who, early on this season for the Cavs had to take a lot of shots. You're taking 23, 24 shots a game. It starts to wear on you once we get to like a little bit after the All-Star break. There's going to be certain guys that have been hot all year that may hit that little wall. Maxi, I don't think production wise it'll, reflect that he's hit a wall or struggled or whatever. But I do think that the emergence of PG, at least as a shot creator, Embiid getting, his legs back under him, that's going to be huge for them because I know people don't want to call them a big three, but I mean these are three of the most talented. You'd say talented, most prioritized. These are the 3 stars on the team. And I still think they can work together. I still think that a guy like PG, I have actually come up with the best nickname for PG. PG is now in a space where he can become the LeBron James of Nick Batum's. So he can be like the GOAT role player right now. I still think he can do that. I've been watching this Sixers Grizzlies game even before I hopped on stream, and he's had moments where he can still off the dribble, get down to the paint, still get to the free throw line. The dribble is still there. He's still, a really, really good knockdown shooter. His 3-point metrics have been off the charts this year. If, with VJ, VJ's hitting that curve where like he's really starting to get the proper amount of reps under his belt and kind of get that experience, next to PG, next to guys like, Kelly Oubre, who's out, but, they'll expect him back at some point. McCain, who has also been in and out. I still think the players, they make sense. They really do make sense. I was jotting down some metrics for the Sixers. Like I said, I had 3 5-man lineups that kind of jumped off the charts when I hopped on Cleaning the Glass. Shout out Cleaning the Glass. That's my new favorite website right now. It's just a much more detailed like analytics slash metric like platform that kind of breaks down guys and players and stuff like that. So like I said, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jared McCain, PG, and Andre Drummond. The reason why that lineup that has, like I said, a plus 30.8 point differential per 100 possessions and is shooting and pacing a 58.3 effective field goal percentage is because Drummond is Embiid insurance. The problem for the Sixers the past couple years is they haven't been able to figure out how they can be, how should I say this? The Sixers, obviously, with Maxey, getting his feet wet in the NBA, and now they just took VJ Edgecombe, brought PG. Like before, during the MVP candidate years of Embiid, like after Ben Simmons, they haven't been able to figure out the non-Embiid minutes, and I feel like that has also played a factor in why he's kind of deteriorated over the past, 2 3 years with his lower extremities and his knees and everything. He's been really broken down, and I think because they've kind of over relied on him, that was really the con with how the Ben Simmons situation went down is that all right, now we don't have Ben Simmons, we're gonna bring Harden in, and then we're not gonna pay Harden, so it's Maxey. So you know what I mean? Like Embiid has kind of had to adjust on the fly in terms of like, all right, I'm gonna be this like top 5 level guy for you guys, but when I'm not on the court, what do we look like? So this lineup of Maxey, VJ, McCain, PG, Drummond, I think it's a pretty formidable lineup. You got 3 ball handlers, so you don't have to rely on PG to really, shot create, which I feel like is one of the areas in his game that he's like taken a little bit of a decline, not in terms of ability, but just the wear and tear. Like I don't think you can ask him to go generate possession to possession like you used to. And that's just because of age and the miles on him. But that 5-man lineup, 3 guards, Maxey doesn't have to exactly be this point, forward general. McCain, you can't really hunt him on defense if you have guys like VJ and PG to bail him out. Maxey can still go and do his thing. So I kind of want to see more of that lineup. Only 13 possessions, so it's like obviously the metrics are skewed, so it's not really that telling. But plus 30.8 point differential just in that minimal amount of time. And a lot of these guys have been hurt. Like McCain has been in and out of the lineup, like I said earlier. PG is just getting his legs under him too. So that's one lineup that really was intriguing to me. The other one was the starting lineup that they actually started with tonight, and I'm sure after tonight's game, like these metrics are probably going to improve. But Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, PG, Barlow, and Embiid. That 5-man lineup is pacing a plus 20.6 point differential per 100 possessions. As that 5-man unit, they're shooting a 53.3 effective field goal percentage, and that's in 63 possessions. So that's obviously like a little bit, it's a better sample size, I would say. And I don't know, there's just something about Philly. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's their competitive nature. I don't know if it's Nick Nurse. There's just something about that team that I just feel like they're not, like, this version of them is not going to be the version of them we see in the playoffs. And this is where I give Tyrese Maxey credit. The reason why I feel like he should get just a teeny bit of MVP love is because he's really been the main source of offense. I mean, VJ really hit the ground running the first 2-3 weeks. He's come down to earth a little bit, but I mean, they've lost 3 straight. They were 16-11, probably like last week. So they've slipped down the standings. They're 7th in the East right now. But let's see, they're 2 games out of the 4 seed. So, the East is really up in the air. The third team that I really wanted to touch upon quickly, the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic, similar to the Bucks, analytics, metrics-wise, they're not going to jump off your screen. But when you watch their games, and that's been one of the few Eastern Conference teams outside the Boston Celtics that I've gone on a lot of time to really like sit down, watch, and just get to really analyze what they're doing as a team. They've suffered some injuries too over same month. I think pretty sure Paolo and Franz Wagner, they had the same injury, but like a week apart or 2 weeks apart. Anthony Black has been a revelation the past like 2 weeks. Desmond Bane has had like some really, really big clutch moments for them. He's had some big nights. So I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I think they're rounding into form. I think they're awaiting Franz back. If I'm not too wrong. I'm pretty sure they're awaiting Franz Wagner back, but I think it's a good team, and they've been some really, really, really good teams in the league. I think the last like big Magic game I watched was against the Nuggets at home. I think that game might have went into overtime, but they beat the Nuggets. They played them really well over the past month. Oof, 20th in net. So like analytic wise, they're not gonna jump out to you, but I cut them some slack because they've dealt with a good amount of injuries. Like I said, Paolo and Franz. Jalen Suggs has been in and out of the lineup. That's their premier perimeter stopper at the point of attack. Like they're very well worth like streaming on any given night. So Anthony Black, I believe it's his 3rd year. Anthony Black over his last 10 games, 20.8 points, 5.5 rebounds, 4.4 assists, shooting 45% from the field, 38% from 3 on 6 attempts, and 73 from the line. That's a pretty big deal because that alleviates Bane of having to create, possession to possession. Paolo, Franz, who, and I wrote an article about them. I think this was like 3 years ago, back when I was still writing for NGSC. And I wrote about how those 2 guys, Paolo and Franz, they're basically in the Tatum Brown, like, how should I say, the Tatum Brown spot, where like you got 2 wings, multifaceted, can do a lot of different things. They're obviously, their main suit is scoring. They can score. That's their first point of attack is to score. But they can rebound, they can play make, they can shoot. I mean, Franz and Paolo have had certain stretches where they can display their shot prowess on the 3-point line, but for the most part, like they're like 2 versatile wings that can impact the floor on both ends. So I guess really the key equation is they've had this real they've been playing guard roulette since like they took Paolo. They had Cole Anthony. Then they had the period of time where they had Markelle Fultz. They brought in Tyus Jones this year. Now during during the transition of those three guards, obviously Anthony Black was improving year in, year out. But I think if Black can maintain this level of play next to Bane, because Bane has been really good for him, I think Bane might make the All-Star team for them. If I had to pick one All-Star, I think it would be him. I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel like that's not too far off if I was to say he's low-key been their best player this year, especially in big moments. Paolo has been here and there. I mean, Desmond is averaging what, 19, 44 from the field, 34 from three, 92 from the line, 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists. I mean, that's kind of along the lines with Paolo and Franz. Franz is averaging 23, Paolo 20. Both of them are shooting sub 50 from the field, 44 for Paolo, 49 for Franz. Paolo shooting 24% from three on 4 attempts, Franz 36 on 4 attempts, both averaging north of 4 rebounds and 4 assists. So I think they're still trying to figure out who their best five is. They have guys like Tristan da Silva, Bidanze, Wendell Carter. Those guys really work hard. In fact, those guys are in some like intriguing lineups when Franz and or Paolo haven't been there, and I can see where there's some overlap, but they're a competitive team. They play defense, but with Bane being that, that knockdown shooter now, I think now you have an opportunity to win a couple rounds. Now you have an opportunity to go to New York and give them a hard-fought 6-7 game series, and 6-7 games, it just takes 2-3 plays, and you never know, it can go either way. But I think now I can put them in the conversation with maybe Cleveland, maybe Miami, maybe New York. And no one has even really stood out in the East, in my opinion. People are going to say New York. People are going to get on me, oh, Nass, you're biased, you're a Celtics fan. But it's like New York hasn't been there before. They have no experience in the Eastern Conference Finals. They haven't been to a final since, I think, 2001. I mean, not 2001, 99, sorry. They haven't been there. Brunson hasn't been there. Their stars haven't been there. Cat hasn't even been there even in Minnesota. He's been to the playoffs, but no one has been on that big stage. Maybe Mike Brown, and that's about it. So I don't know. I'm a little biased towards the Knicks, but it's like I need to see it. You know what I mean? Like the Celtics were up 20 on them in the series last year, and now you're trying to tell me the switch from Thibodeau to Mike Brown, and I know they do a lot of different stuff offensively. They're really sharing the ball. A lot more ball movement. It's a lot less Brunson and or town centric, but I still need to see it. I still need to see it, and they've had some nights where they play really well, but also like the Knicks just beat the Pelicans by like 2 points the other night, and the Pelicans are like the second or third worst team in the West. So it's like, you know what I mean? I've seen Jaylen Brown beat this team already this year. So I don't know. They're a tough team to get a read on. They've had some injuries with McBride. I know I kind of got off topic, but just thinking about the Eastern Conference outlook, the Orlando Magic, I think, like, they're already not scared of New York. That's just how they're wired. But from an ability standpoint, they have defenders. They have scorers. They have shooters. They have, guys that can make plays for others. I think they give them a harder series than, you would think. And I don't think you would say that 2 months ago when we heard that they gave up 5 first-round picks for Desmond Bane. I don't think anyone was jumping out of their chair saying, "Oh, this really might be an Eastern Conference juggernaut." But yeah, the Orlando Magic, if Anthony Black can maintain that level of play next to Bane, I like that team. I like how they look. Obviously, do I think they can win the East? Probably not. But that's definitely a team that's trending in the right direction. And, if I'm not sure, they got that Jace Richardson kid. There's another shooter out of Michigan State, Jason Richardson's son. So they're young guys. Like their farm system it's turning out. It's really turning out. You see the time that the young guys have put in, and that the Orlando Magic, they might be a team 2 years from now where you're like, damn, like this team is one role player away from like going to the finals. If this is what we're gonna see from Franz, Paolo, and Anthony Black, and Bane can enter, his prime, still on a competitive team. A couple lineups. And like I said, I love being on Cleaning the Glass. Cleaning the Glass is one of the best websites for any NBA junkie. But I took some notes, looked at a couple rotations, particularly the ones where either Franz or Paolo. Well, in this case, I used Franz off the court instead of Paolo because that's just what was going on lately. So Desmond Bane, Anthony Black, Paolo, Tristan da Silva, and Wendell Carter. That team is a +9 point differential per 100 possessions. And Suggs, Anthony Black, Desmond Bane, Paolo, and Carter is a +6 point differential per 100 possessions. When they get Suggs back, that's really when I feel like I'll have a better sense of who they are, like as an identity, because like these are interesting lineups. You have Suggs, Anthony Black, Bane, Paolo, and even Franz. You could make Paolo your like if you want to go real small, like if they were matching up against like the Warriors, right? Crunch time, you could really go Suggs, Black, Bane, Franz, and Paolo. You have Paolo at the 5. You have 2-3 guards that can, get downhill, create off the dribble. And then you have Franz who can kind of be that plug, you know, that skip pass guy, that guy that's looming in the corner, that, the hockey assist guy. Like that's a guy that he doesn't really care too much about his numbers. Obviously, he can score, but he can be that glue guy for a unit like that. Or if you take Paolo off the court and you go like Suggs, Bane, Tristan da Silva, Franz, and Wendell Carter. Like that's a lineup you could run in the playoffs. Like actually, those are 3 Eastern Conference teams that I think over the course of the year they may either surprise some teams, they may hit the ground running. I think those are just 3 teams that I can envision going on a stretch, as the season unfolds, going from like now to like, a little bit after the All-Star break. I still think there's some momentum that those 3 teams can build. The New Orleans Pelicans started off 5-0 as soon as Jordan Poole came back from injury. They actually have all sorts of lineups that have really intrigued me. I've watched a good amount of them the past week or so. I think I watched them against the Suns 2 nights ago. I watched them against the New York Knicks last night. They played really, really good basketball. They're 3rd in scoring over their last 10 games. They have the 8th best net rating, and they're 7th in rebounds. So at least on offense, they're figuring it out. Zion is finally taking off his minutes restriction. He's playing next to Derek Queen. I told everyone before the season started, these 2 players can play together because Queen is a guy that can play outside the paint. He can impact the game offensively outside of the paint, really raise everyone's floors. And they have all these shooters and defenders, guys like Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Alvarado, Sadiq Bey, he's been pretty productive for them. He had a big first quarter against the Knicks. I'm pretty sure he scored 21 points. Big first quarter heat check. Down the stretch, even though the Pelicans did lose the game, but down the stretch, he was making routinely read after read out of the triple threat, out of the mid post, finding guys, just basically being a point forward. And that's not even his game. He's like a sniper. But, those 4 or 5 possessions in crunch time, he was really, really like making other guys look good. You got to really tip your hat off to James Borrego, former Hornets coach. Him just going in there, getting a sense of an identity. He understands, obviously, Zion's coming back from injury. Oh, we got to play Zion. Yeah, for sure. But if you're that type of coach and you can sit down and have a realness conversation with your franchise player and be like, listen, I want to maximize you, but right now we got to figure some things out. Obviously, starting and playing him 35 minutes off the bat, coming back, like there just has to be other ways of really maximizing him. So that's what they're doing. They're playing him in like 20 to 25 minute spurts. That's what they did the first like 4 or 5 games. And, he was still putting up, numbers when he can. Really what the Pelicans were doing is they would like load manage him throughout the game. And then the last like 6-7 minutes of the fourth, he's just playing. So if that's really what it takes to really maximize, who he is for them, then so be it. Yeah, with the Pelicans, I've been paying attention to them the past couple games. Sadiq Bey, Trey Murphy. Those are 2 shooters. They're shooting, over 60% true shooting. Couple lineups that I've actually like, taken note of. Entering Christmas, Poole, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, who's actually out to an injury, Zion, Derek Queen, plus 16.5 point differential in 24 possessions. They're averaging 120 points per 100 possessions. Poole, Alvarado, Sadiq Bey, Zion, Derek Queen. That's a plus 16-point differential in 22 possessions. They're averaging 120 points per 100 possessions. Poole, Trey Murphy, Sadiq Bey, Zion, Derek Queen, plus 50.5 point differential in 22 possessions. They're averaging 145.5 points per 100 possessions. I know I just threw a lot of numbers at you, but I just like teams that make sense. I like players that can complement each other. And, I just think Derek Queen and Zion, this is a guy that needs exponential space in the paint. Derek Queen is not a great 3-point shooter, not a, standout great jump shooter, but with his prowess as a, dribble handoff guy, a screener, he can really, really impact the game and get guys good looks. And I think him being able to impact the game away from the paint, obviously allows Zion to, go and get lobs and back doors and just beat his guy at the point of attack. So I think those two are really going to be really, really good for each other. I really like the Pelicans. It's, kind of weird because I think they're like second to the bottom in the West, but bro, they're third in scoring the past 10 games. I don't think that's a fluke. Play 10 games of an NBA season and you're third amongst 30 teams in scoring. They're not solving everything, but they're solving certain things. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd have to say about the Pelicans. Jordan Poole just returned. I just don't think it's a fluke. He's shooting sub 40% from the field, but at the same time, you got to take into account that they're still being able to win games. They need him to be able to be crafty. Just like in that Knicks game, he had like 26 points, 50% from the field. They need a creator. As much as you like guys like Alvarado and Jordan Hawkins, like you need that guy who's going to be able to look at a guy in the eye and be like, all right, I can go mano a mano. Oh my God. Ja fell out of bounds. Went 28 apiece, chat. 43 seconds left. Ah, man. I know Philly's just lost 3 straight. But yeah, the New Orleans Pelicans, like I'm obviously not gonna sit here and say, hey, that's a team you should look out for going forward. But at the same time, it's a team that's kind of rounding into form with Zion coming back, Poole coming back. Derek Queen has officially been unleashed. I would say, Trey Murphy and Sadiq Bey, those guys are probably 2 players on the team that are, reaping a lot of the benefits from that. But they're a really, really good team. And I really enjoy watching them play basketball. You need to have a couple bad basketball teams in your life. You know what I mean? Gotta have a couple bad basketball teams in your life. Bad but talented. You know what I'm saying? So as always, like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, do all that. This version will be edited and put on YouTube. Obviously, for those that use Twitch, this VOD will be saved on here for the next 2 weeks. So if you want to tap in, tap in. And I think that's all she wrote. That's all she wrote. All right, I'm about to catch the rest of the Sixers game. Peace.